That moment, did you catch it? Not the speech, not the headlines, but that half-second pause before Princess Leonor stepped forward, adjusted her posture, and didn't look back. That's the shift. Not announced, not dramatic, but final. Because when someone stops looking back, it usually means they've already decided there's no return. And here's what most people missed in the last 48 hours, this wasn't just another royal appearance. This was the quiet confirmation that Leonor is no longer preparing to be queen, she's actively stepping into it. Let me explain why that matters, and why I actually think the palace is being very careful about how they want you to see it. But before we go deeper, if you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Because this isn't just about royalty anymore. It's about power, timing, and strategy. So let's talk about that shift. Not the official version, not the polished narrative, the real one, because the media will tell you this is a natural transition. A young royal finishing training, stepping into duty, following tradition. But I don't buy that completely. I think this is accelerated. And when something is accelerated inside a system that usually moves slowly, there's always a reason. Think about it. For decades, the Spanish monarchy, led by King Felipe VI, has been about stability. Careful moves, controlled messaging, no surprises. So why does Leonor's transition suddenly feel faster, more visible, more intentional? Here's my take, and tell me if you feel this too. This isn't just about Leonor being ready. It's about the monarchy needing her to be ready now. Because the world around them is changing faster than the institution itself. And if they don't adapt, they risk becoming irrelevant. That's the part nobody says out loud. Look at how Leonor is being positioned lately. Not just as a future queen, but as a symbol. Youth, discipline, modernity, and honestly, a kind of quiet authority that feels very different from previous generations. She's not trying to dominate attention. She's controlling it, and that's powerful. Now let's compare this for a second, because context matters. Think about Catherine, Princess of Wales. Her rise wasn't rushed. It was gradual, carefully shaped over years until the public fully accepted her role. Leonor, this feels different. Less waiting, more positioning. Almost like the palace understands something we don't. Or maybe something they don't want to say yet. And here's where it gets interesting. Because if you step outside the royal bubble and look at how influence works today, you'll notice something. Power is no longer just about titles. It's about attention, narrative, presence. In a strange way, figures like MrBeast understand this better than most traditional institutions. He doesn't wait for relevance. He creates it. And I think, quietly, the monarchy is learning that same lesson. Leonor isn't just being trained to rule. She's being trained to hold attention in a world that moves too fast. But here's the uncomfortable question. What's the cost of this shift? Because there's always a cost. You don't move someone into full-time royal obligations without taking something away. Privacy, freedom, normalcy, and maybe even identity. Let me be honest here. I sometimes wonder if Leonor had a real choice in the timing of this. Yes, she was always going to become queen. That part was never in question. But when she fully steps into that role, that's usually more flexible. And yet, here we are, watching it happen in real time. There's also something else, a subtle tension, not visible, not spoken, but felt. Because when someone transitions this visibly, this publicly, there's pressure behind the scenes. Expectations, standards, comparisons. And that's where the palace has to be careful. Because if they push too hard, too fast, they risk turning Leonor into a symbol instead of a person. And audiences today, they can tell the difference. Let me pause here and ask you something. When you watch Leonor now, do you see confidence? Or do you see responsibility? Because those are not the same thing. Confidence is chosen, responsibility is assigned, and sometimes, one hides the other. Now here's a perspective you won't hear in most coverage. I think this shift is less about Leonor becoming something, and more about the institution redefining itself through her. She's not just stepping into a role. The role itself is being reshaped around her. More visible, more relatable, more aligned with how modern audiences engage with figures of power. But that comes with risk. Because the more visible you are, the more you're analyzed. The more you're expected to perform consistency. And that's exhausting, even for people who chose that life. And this brings me to what I've personally learned watching this transition unfold. Not as a headline, not as a royal update, but as a pattern. Real power moves rarely look dramatic in the moment. They look quiet, subtle, almost easy to miss, until you look back and realize. That was the moment everything changed. That pause, that step forward, that decision not to look back. So here's the real question. Is Leonor ready, or is the world simply demanding that she be ready now? And maybe the more important one, will this make her a stronger queen, or just a faster one? Because speed and strength, they're not always the same thing. And I'll leave you with this. If this truly is her official shift into full-time royal life, then what we're watching isn't just a transition. It's the beginning of how history will remember her. Not as the future queen, but as the moment she stopped being one, and quietly became something else entirely. And if you stay with that thought for a second, something starts to feel different. Because once that shift happens, once someone stops being the future and starts becoming the present, the rules change. The expectations double, and the margin for error, it disappears. Let's go deeper into what this actually means for Princess Leonor. Because from this point forward, every appearance isn't just an appearance anymore. It's a signal, a message, a test. And I don't think people fully understand how intense that is. Imagine knowing that every move you make, every expression, every pause, every word, is being analyzed not just by the public, but by the institution you're meant to represent. That's pressure on a different level. And here's something I've been thinking about. Is this really about duty? Or is it about control? Not in a negative way, but in a strategic way. Because the monarchy, especially under King Felipe VI, has learned from the past. They've seen what happens when narratives get out of control. They've seen how quickly public trust can shift. So what do? You don't wait for the narrative. You shape it early. And that's exactly what this feels like. Leonor isn't being introduced gradually anymore. She's being established. Quickly, clearly, deliberately, almost like the palace is saying, no confusion, no uncertainty, this is the future, get used to it. But here's where I push back a little. Because clarity can sometimes feel like pressure in disguise. And I keep coming back to this question. At what point does preparation turn into expectation? Let's bring in another comparison for a second. Look at Catherine, Princess of Wales again. Her public identity was built slowly, almost organically. There was time to make mistakes. Time to grow into the role. Time to be human before being fully symbolic. Leonor, it feels like that phase is being compressed. And when you compress something too much, it either becomes incredibly strong or it cracks. Now, I'm not saying Leonor isn't capable. Actually, it's the opposite. From everything we've seen, her discipline, her composure, her awareness, she might be one of the most prepared heirs we've seen in a long time. But readiness isn't just about ability. It's about timing. And timing is rarely in your control. Let me give you a different angle. Think about influence today, not in royal terms, but in modern terms. People like MrBeast don't just succeed because of consistency. They succeed because they understand attention cycles. When to show up, how to show up, and how to evolve before the audience gets bored. Now imagine applying that to a monarchy. That's what makes this moment so interesting. Because what we're seeing might actually be a rebranding strategy. Not loud, not obvious, but very real. And Leonor is at the center of it. Not just as a participant, but as the face of that evolution. Now here's the part that stays with me the most. And I want you to really think about this. What happens after the transition? Because everyone focuses on the shift, the moment, the headlines. But the real story, it's what comes next. Consistency, sustainability, identity. Because stepping into a role is one thing. Living in it, every single day, is something else entirely. And that's where most people either grow or quietly struggle. I also think there's something emotional happening here that isn't being talked about enough. Not publicly, at least. Because transitions like this, they're not just professional, they're personal. There's a version of your life that ends. And another one that begins. And you don't always get time to process that in between. So when I saw that moment, that pause, that step, that decision not to look back, I didn't just see confidence. I saw acceptance. And maybe that's the real shift. Not the schedule, not the responsibilities, but the mindset. Because once you accept that this is your life, fully, completely, without hesitation, you stop resisting, and you start owning it. But again, that comes at a cost. And I don't think we've seen the full weight of that yet. So let me ask you one more thing. And be honest with yourself when you answer this. Are we watching Leonor rise? Or are we watching her adapt? Because those are two very different stories. One is about power. The other is about survival inside power. And maybe, just maybe, it's both. Because if this truly is her official shift into full-time royal obligations, then the next phase won't be about proving she's ready. It will be about proving she can sustain it. And that's where the real story begins. Not in the announcement, not in the appearance, but in the quiet, everyday moments that follow. The moments where there's no script, no preparation, no second take, just her, standing in a role that no one else can fully understand, and figuring out, in real time, what kind of queen she's actually going to become.